Do you ever have things not go your way? Specifically, something that you spend a lot of time working on, and then you find out that it was ineffective. It can be so frustrating, but we have to move past these things. We have to accept what is there and move on. This morning, I was up early, as I often am. I made a lot of notes for a solo podcast episode I was going to record for you. And then I sat down and I recorded it. I spent about 30 to 40 minutes putting this together. And then I went to upload it to my VA, but I listened to it a little bit first and it sounded like garbage. And I don't know what happened, but you know what? I moved on. I had other things to do. And I feel like even though a lot of great things happened today, in the back of my head, I was a little bit spiteful toward that because I said, well, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to go sit down and record that episode. And I was almost punishing myself because it didn't go well. And then I just decided at the end of the day, no, I need to record it and it'll be even better and more efficient this time. Hello and welcome to the Talent Development Hot Seat. I am your host, Andy Storch. One of my goals in life, and as I'm building a brand, is to be completely honest, authentic, and vulnerable. And that's why I will always share successes as well as failures with you. And this is my second attempt at recording an episode about preparing for your next role. Should you be getting certifications or education? And should you be networking? And should you be thinking about building a personal brand? And I want to go into a few of those things with you now. And this actually came from a question from a listener who asked, who said he was thinking about transitioning from a different career into a learning designer role and wondered what sort of certifications should he be thinking about getting. And I don't really know that much about all the different certifications out there. I have not worked in HR or learning design. I happen to be a consultant in the talent development space. I'm really well connected, but I haven't worked there myself. And so I reached out to some friends and asked for their advice. Before I get to that, I want to step back and think about this idea of education and certifications and learning in general when it comes to your career. For many people, we go to college, we get a degree, and then we start our job and we just continue doing that job for weeks, months, and years, and then finally decades. And oftentimes people wake up one day and realize that the things that they studied in school are obsolete. They have nothing to do with what they're doing today. And they oftentimes get behind because they're not studying what's going on, the latest things in the industry. When I interviewed Sarah McEnany from PwC about future-proofing the workforce, she talked about this idea of degrees becoming obsolete after 5, 10, 20 years and us needing to really get continuing education. And when you think about it, your doctor, your dentist, your accountant, they all have to do continuing education. They all have to go through classes from time to time to make sure they are up to speed on the latest rules, laws, all kinds of things like that. But for most of us, for most jobs, most careers, that is not a requirement. We can go about things however we want. And of course, it's a capitalistic open market, and companies and people can hire us or not based on our experience and the things that we're doing. But what if we approached it, maybe not like an accountant or a doctor, but what if we approached our career as if we need to be continuously learning and educating ourselves on our jobs, the future of our job, the future of work, where things are going? How much more attractive would you be to employers if you were able to keep up with everything that's going on and you dedicated a certain amount of time to learning, maybe not a formal degree, because degrees are obviously expensive. They take a lot of time. They can be well recognized. It's great to have on your resume, but there's trade-offs to that. But what if it were more certification programs, courses, or books? There's so many ways today that we can continue to learn. And so my advice, inspiration for you, first and foremost, is to think about your life and your career as a constant improvement or constant opportunity for improvement, and that there are always opportunities to learn, and that if you stay humble, you realize that the world and business are always changing, and that you have an opportunity to keep up if you have an open mind and you're hungry for knowledge, and you think of yourself as an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, someone who has to go back to school every year and do continuing education. Now, for people changing careers, you may want to educate yourself even more. You may want to find certifications or other things you can do. And when I reached out to friends, connections in the HR world, to ask about their recommendations on certifications, what they said was that certifications are fine, but they often become irrelevant. Sometimes they're actually, even though they go through a well-known organization, they're run by vendors and there's a bias to them. And so the gist of what they said was that you need to focus more on practical knowledge, and this you can get more from books and online courses. You don't necessarily need a certification. Here are some recommendations from my friend Nick Elkins, who is a longtime learning designer and a lifetime learner. He recommended 4 books that I will mention now. One of them is The Accidental Instructional Designer. The next one is Design for How People Learn. The next one is E-Learning Fundamentals. And the 4th is E-Learning Designer's Handbook. And those are all if you intend on moving into or growing a career as a learning designer. If you don't, you may not be interested in those books unless you just want to learn a lot of different things. Recommendation I got from my friend Mike Pino, who was at GE and then Cognizant, I think he's moving to PwC now, was that you can find a couple of courses on Coursera. One is a UI/UC and a MicroMasters from edX from UMUC. I'm looking at my notes from him now. He goes deep into all these things, and if you need more recommendations, I can put you in touch. Mike also said to forget about the history and focus on what's relevant today and find books, courses, videos that teach those concepts. And here's what I would add. Networking is so important. If I were you, and if I were me, and if I were you, and I was looking to change careers or position myself for a future career, I would start networking like crazy. That's my go-to way. I think everything in life happens from relationships, and I think it's the best way to learn as well. That's why I started both of my podcasts, this one, The Talent Development Hot Seat, and my other podcast, The Andy Storch Show, which was originally about entrepreneurship. And it was all for the opportunity to interview different people and learn from them and make connections and build relationships. And I've done that over the last 2 years. It's worked wonderfully. I'm going to continue to do it because my network keeps growing. I have so many wonderful people that I can call on when I need advice on what certifications you should get to become a learning designer, for example, right? Many of other things that come up. So let's get back to you. If you're thinking about changing careers down the line or setting yourself up for a new career, here's what I would do. I would get onto LinkedIn and I would find at least 20 people that are doing the thing that you think you want to do. I would connect with them and I would send them a message and say, hey, I'm thinking about becoming an X. I want to get into talent development. I want to get into marketing. I want to become a learning designer. And it looks like you have a successful career in this space. Could I pick your brain? Could we get together for coffee if we're local? Could I call you one day when you have some time and ask you some questions about how you got to where you are, the mistakes you made, what advice you have for someone trying to get into a career like this? Now, bonus advice, focus on people that you have some type of connection with, whether they are alumni of the same school that you went to, maybe they've worked in the same place that you have, they're in the same city, they have common interests. Look for some type of, you have connections in common. That always warms people up a little bit faster. But at the end of the day, everybody loves helping people. And you probably like helping people. So why would they turn you down? It's a chance for them to share some of their advice and some of their knowledge about their career and some things that they wish they would have done differently. And now they can help save you time by passing that advice on to you. And here's the benefit. Now, first of all, I recommend that you go, I don't know if it's second of all, but most importantly, I recommend you go into this with no expectations, all right? Your only expectation is you're going to hopefully connect with people and learn some things. But if you show up, you sound somewhat intelligent, show that you've been doing all your homework, there's a chance that that person may be looking to hire someone and you'll be right in front of them and they'll say, you know what, we're actually looking for an intern, or we're looking for an entry-level position, or we're looking for someone to fill this type of role. And you don't have quite as much experience, but you're obviously very hungry to learn. We'd be willing to give you a shot. And then they give you a shot at it, right? I've had many jobs, almost all my jobs and business opportunities have come from connections that I've made. And if you look at your life and your career, I'd be willing to bet that many of your job opportunities, business opportunities have come from connections as well. So reach out to a bunch of people, make those connections, learn from them. I think that's probably the most important thing. The last thing I'll mention is this idea of a personal brand. I think That question comes up sometimes. It's more common to hear people talking about a personal brand. What the heck is that? Should I be thinking about that if I'm in the corporate world? And I think yes. First of all, we all have a brand. I recently interviewed Michelle Tillis Letterman, who speaks all the time about networking and branding. Haven't published that interview yet. It was very recent. She talked about how everybody has a brand, whether you want to or not, whether you talk about it or not, you have a brand, which is what people think about you. And so you have an opportunity to direct that and to be more intentional about what you put out into the world. And that could include how you act around people. It could include your communication style. It could include the content that you put out there. And I've recommended to friends many times, unsolicited recommendation. They don't have to listen to me. But if you're looking to change careers, get a new job, accelerate your career, you want to think long-term about where you're going, I always recommend start creating content. Put stuff out there on LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube if you're bold. But LinkedIn is a great place for business content to start developing your authority, your expertise. And it doesn't all have to be, it doesn't have to be original content. It doesn't have to be all from your brain. You can post articles, you can post videos, you can post about books that you read and just say, hey, I listened to this great, interesting podcast called The Talent Development Hot Seat by Andy Storch. And I think that it's worth checking this out. Here are the insights I got from it, and here's why. Or I read this HBR article, and here are the insights I got from it. What do you think? And now you're probably not going to get a lot of engagement right away. LinkedIn is tough. Let me tell you, I've been posting on LinkedIn daily for 18 months, and it takes a while to get engagement going. But here's the benefit that you won't see right away, but you get long-term, is that at some point in your career, you're going to be applying for a job, or you're going to be trying to change careers, do something else. And that hiring manager, that recruiter, whatever, they're going to look you up, and they're going to go to your LinkedIn profile. They're going to say, we want someone that has good experience, knows what they're doing, and maybe has a little bit of thought leadership too. Let's see if she or he has ever created any content. And they're going to see that you posted an article once a week for the last year, whatever it is. You've got 50 posts. And they're going to go, oh, wow, this person is reading a lot. And that's the thing. It's 2019. It might be later when you listen to this. Content is the name of the game. It's sort of like, picture or it didn't happen kind of thing. When you share that you're reading something, then people know that you're reading and you're learning. And so you have that content out there. And so I recommend, even if you're not that ambitious or audacious, you're not used to putting a lot of content out there. Like I try to do it daily, and that's a lot. But set a goal that you'll post on LinkedIn once a week, an article, something interesting that you read. You're probably reading articles anyway. If you listen to me, you're hungry for knowledge. So you're probably listening to podcasts and reading articles. I have a couple listeners who post about my podcast all the time on LinkedIn. And of course, I would love for you to share this podcast or one of my articles or one of my posts, but share anything. Share other content that you're listening to or you're reading or you're following. It doesn't have to be original, and just put your spin on it. And it shows that you're out there consuming content, that you're learning, and it starts to develop your expertise. It starts to develop your authority. And over time, people will see that. Long-term, people will go to your LinkedIn profile or whatever profile you use the most on social media and see that you've been putting stuff out there. And so that's my last piece of advice. You don't have to do that. But number one, think about consistently learning, whether it's books, online courses, certifications, or even formal education. I also recommend seminars, conferences. I'm big on those. Speaking of conferences, as you may know, I am hosting my first conference later this year. It's called the Talent Development Think Tank. It will be held November 6th and 7th in Sonoma, California. We have some fantastic speakers coming. Liz Weissman, the author of Multipliers, Josh Bersin. We have Julie Winkle-Giulioni, who's been on this podcast. And that's not all. We're going to have some great sessions. It's going to be interactive. You're going to network with each other. You're going to learn from each other. You're not only going to learn a ton, but you're going to make those connections. They're going to help you get that next job. I promise you that. It's going to happen at this event because it's going to be so friendly and thoughtful, and we're going to be solving real problems together. It's going to be a great conference. Other conferences are great too. Get out there, go to things, network with people, talk to people, learn. There are a lot of places we can go to learn. So that's number one. Number two was build your network. Continue to network with people who are doing the jobs that you might want later on. Ask them for their advice because you're going to learn the most from that. And number three is think about building your authority slowly. It could be posting on LinkedIn once a week. It could be sharing articles on Facebook and I don't know, Medium. I guess you write articles on there. It could be a Twitter. I'm not a Twitter user. That's my weakness in social media. By the way, I post a lot on LinkedIn and Instagram. And so if we're not connected, you're not following me, I'd love for you to come follow me on LinkedIn, Andy Storch, Storch, and find me on Instagram, Andy_Storch, Storch. And of course, I would love for you to sign up for our newsletter and check out our conference. You can do all that at talentdevelopmenthotseat.com. That is talentdevelopmenthotseat.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a fantastic weekend and week, and I will catch you next week. Cheers.